Hey, Foot Clan, listen. 2016 is here. It's a new year. It's a fresh start. Have you been thinking about New Year's resolutions? Well, here's one that's a no-brainer. Stop overpaying for a great shave. Here's where Harry's comes in. Harry's makes their own high-quality German-engineered blades for a close, comfortable shaves, no cuts, no burns. We love Harry's, and here's what the deal is. Harry's will give you $5 off your first order with promo code FOOTBALLERS. Stop overpaying for a great shave. Start the new year off right. Go to harrys.com right now. That's HARRYS.com. Enter code FOOTBALLERS at checkout for $5 off.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Hello, everybody. Hello. We're back.
We are back.
We are back.
Most of us.
We are lining up the kick.
Oh.
The ball has been snapped. Laces towards the kicker.
Oh, man.
Mike, it's your turn. Kick it.
Twitter explodes with Ray Finkle reports.
Oh, I cannot believe the speed of the internet anymore. I saw more of the crying Michael Jordan memes.
Oh, yes.
Within 30 seconds of the Blair Walsh kick. We don't even know how to process the Blair Walsh kick. I don't even know why I started the show with the Blair Walsh kick, because it just puts me in a bad mood.
Sometimes you got to start with a disaster.
Because everything after it seems,
it's all downhill from
seems
there.
like a made extra point. Yeah, that was crazy. I watched every minute of every game this weekend.
Delightful, as did I.
So we're back. We're the Fantasy Footballers. It is only Mike and I today. Jason is on vacation with his family. He is visiting Disneyland.
The mouse.
Which you did earlier this year.
Absolutely.
So,
are you next?
Maybe the show should send my family to Disneyland.
We'll consider it.
So it is Tuesday, January 11th. We are the Fantasy Footballers, and we are back again.
The 12th.
Oh,
it's the
did
12th.
I say the 11th?
Yeah.
Well, that was yesterday. We're going to go through the rewind, give you all the news that you need to know relating to the fantasy news, basically, and injury news, things like that. What we have today on the show.
A treat.
I'm excited. I'm very excited about this. We are going to get to the bottom of quarterbacks. Wait a second. I could probably tease that a little bit better. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to find out the truth about the top 12 quarterbacks in the fantasy football rankings this past year. Were they mirages? Were they guys you could count on? Were they plug-and-play options? What's behind the numbers, Mike?
We're on to them. We're on to you like, hey, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
We're on to you.
We're on to you. So you're going to get some very interesting insight about the top 12 quarterbacks as we dive into the truth. And we find out whether these were guys that you should be looking to for next season, or whether, maybe they just had a really nice schedule. Maybe they couldn't be counted on in any important game that you expected them to be counted on. So those are the type of things we're going to look at. If you want to get a hold of the show, there are lots of ways you can connect with us. You can do it on Twitter at the FF Ballers. You can contact us on Twitter. Each of us has our own handle as well. I'm at Andy Holloway. Jason is at JasonFFL, and Mike is at FF Hitman. You can check out the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. You can submit questions for the show right on there. We answer questions every week. You can check us out on YouTube and on the Fantasy Sports Network as well. And always, we invite you to stop by jointhefoot.com, our fantasy football community on the web, where over 1,000 of you guys are congregating, talking fantasy. We're talking with you, and we do an extra show every week right there on jointhefoot.com. So I'm going to get right into it. Here's what I'm going to start with. Quick question of the day. What did you learn this week, NFL and fantasy-wise? So you can tell me anything you want.
Sure.
I've got my own thoughts. You already know them because I was ranting, so I'll get to them, but I'll let you go first.
Mine, I'm going with Foot Clan. It was a great ride. It was a great ride while it lasted. I have a feeling that next year, the rest of the general public will have caught up to Rule 86. The fact that Jordan Reed is a monster, and when he is healthy, you must play him because he put on a display for the entire country to watch as he dominated in
Yet
during the
again.
Washington Green Bay game.
So how good is Jordan Reed?
And Twitter was exploding with who is the number 2 tight end? Is it Jordan Reed?
Yes, sir.
And as of now, I have to completely agree. When you look at the numbers of once Jordan Reed came back from his midseason injury, he was putting up top 2 numbers. I mean, I think I wasn't ready for this one, but I have to break it down. He might have outscored Gronk in the second half of the season. I mean, he was just a monster and a consistent monster. And then not just putting up, a good tight end game of 8 to 10 points. He'd have these 100-yard, 2-touchdown games. So you know that the ceiling is there. That does not exist for hardly any tight ends in the NFL.
I think he was 8 for 121 and a touchdown yesterday.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, right.
Here's what else I know about Jordan Reed. Just to jump on the bandwagon with you, when you watch the games, when you watch the film, and you watch Kirk Cousins and Jordan Reed on the field together, there's a reason behind these numbers happening over and over again, and it's you're my first read on a lot of plays. Oh, yes, pun intended. You are my first read in my heart, and a high percentage chance that he's going to catch the ball. He had an incredible one-handed catch yesterday.
Oh,
that looked like an interception.
Yes, it would have been an interception, but
so you learned that Jordan Reed is legit.
Yeah, well, we already knew he was legit, but it's just next year. As of right now, I mean,
Gronkowski.
You have to assume that Cousins will be back in Washington. As of now, Jordan Reed is the number 2 fantasy tight end.
All right, here's what I learned.
They are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
I could not believe. Listen to this. When I say they are who they thought that we thought they were, all 4 losing teams had a player that was directly responsible for them losing, that did exactly what that player is known to do. Okay, yeah. Brian Hoyer. We make the joke sometimes. Bortles gonna Bortles. We say that because we say, he's gonna throw his picks. He's gonna have his ugly plays. Listen, Hoyered. All right.
Oh man,
it doesn't get much worse than that. We were talking to a friend of ours today. Here's what Hoyer did. He threw a pick. He ran off the field. He charged himself up, and you could see him on the sideline. And he'd be like, "All right, we're gonna get back in there, and I'm just gonna." And then he'd do it again. So Hoyered.
That was quite the performance.
Yeah, and I am insistent he will not be the starting quarterback.
We had this debate. I actually think that Brian Hoyer will come back as the starting quarterback of the Texans. Just I understand that was it doesn't get worse than that during a playoff game when you have to be your best. I just don't think the options are out there. I mean, sure you could pull off a trade for say RG3. That's absolutely a possibility.
He'll be cut.
Hoyer?
No, RG3.
Oh,
RG3 will just be straight cut.
Yeah,
they're not going to pay that option money. So
there'll be,
I think there'll be other guys that trickle out there in circumstances. I just don't think Hoyer is going to be the guy. Listen, another guy who we thought he was. Listen, most of the time it's a good thing. But Adrian Peterson, fumbling with the game on the line.
Loves fumbling in the playoffs.
He does it over and over again. And so once again, a player doing exactly what he shouldn't be doing, can't change in the playoffs. He ran with reckless abandon on that play, and it cost him. It was reckless. Deshaun Jackson, he is who we think he is, and we know it by now. But listen, when he went around the end and casually didn't get into the end zone on that play, he cost his team. It should have been 18-0, 17-0. Instead, it's 11-0. Green Bay got back in the game because Deshaun Jackson was lazy because he does what he does. And then the last guy was perfect. I heard it said the perfect storm. Okay,
oh,
just
very
get
nice.
ready.
That's a good play.
Get ready for perfect. His number should be 15 on his chest because that's the amount of yards that every personal foul is going to cost you. He will make a play that makes you want to give him a hug.
That interception,
sure,
that was,
or even knocking Roethlisberger out with a legal hit. I say legal, a legal hit as opposed to the illegal hit that cost him the game. So to me, what I learned this weekend is that people don't change.
Oh,
you're just the
brutal.
same old player you always are. It was unbelievable.
And I have to imagine a lot of people out there like us. So we're talking we're instant messaging during the game. As soon as So what happened? There was a hit on the Gio Bernard hit. So Gio Bernard gets hit, and we start messaging back and forth like,
here it comes.
Vontae's perfect is going to take out Big Ben.
And it was like the next
sure
play.
Enough,
that was a premonition that could be easily seen by his history.
You knew it was going to happen, and perfect, which it was, to me, that was clean.
Look,
it was a legal hit. It just was unfortunate.
We are saying this from the sympathetic point of view for the Bengals fans out there.
Yeah.
As well as the Vikings fans, because as we can respect Seattle and what they've accomplished. We're Cardinal fans. We certainly didn't want you still in the playoffs. That should be the sign of respect that you deserve, as the fact we don't want you in there.
You? Yeah.
But unbelievable turn of events with these two teams adding to their lore of defeat with Cincinnati and Minnesota. So shout out to you for just staying alive for right now if you're a fan of those teams. Yeah, that's just brutal.
There was the two teams, the Chiefs. The Chiefs definitely won the game, and the Green Bay Packers won the game. And you don't want to focus on the negative, but the Vikings
and the Bengals,
they lost. They lost the game.
They did.
Ugh.
The finality of the playoffs too is just brutal when those plays happen. Because there was this sense when we're rambling a little bit here, but there's a sense when Walsh missed the kick that you're kind of like. You're looking around for a flag or like, wait, is it? No, it can't be over. Wait, it's over? Like, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Twitter exploded with wows and incomprehension. So, all right, that's what we learned this weekend.
Weekly Rewind.
All right, we're going to run through some quick news, stuff that's relevant to the fantasy world this year, next year. The Sacramento Bees, the 49ers are zeroing in on Hugh Jackson. Now,
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Okay.
Allegedly.
So, hypothetically, if he goes there, do you have some fantasy implications? Because I have some thoughts about that.
It only confirms my belief in Carlos Hyde for next year.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm a big Hugh Jackson fan. I think Hugh Jackson's great. I don't know why he ended up in the situation he was with Oakland. I think he would have turned that team around.
Because it's Oakland.
Yeah.
That's what they had been doing for a while. But we saw Hugh Jackson with his system of power backing Darren McFadden to superstardom when he was healthy. I mean, Darren McFadden was a beast for those couple years with Hugh Jackson. Now we're hearing the 49ers are also interviewing Tom Coughlin, which they have to get permission from the New York Giants.
Because he retired and didn't get fired? Is that why?
Yes. So, I mean, the Giants own his rights, but they don't want him to coach the team.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little surprised Coughlin's jumping right back in. We've also heard the same rumors about him going to Philadelphia. And so that would be in the division. So if I'm looking at who I want to let him go to, I'd probably let him go to San Francisco. I like Hugh Jackson. I like Tom Coughlin.
The funniest coach news I heard, I didn't verify this or anything, but someone was mentioning allegedly that Philadelphia has sought permission to interview Andy Reid. This could have been a complete joke, but I was just laughing at this.
Okay.
As a comment.
That's got to be a complete joke.
Yeah,
there.
But it was
because they're seeking permission for Tom Coughlin's situation,
right?
Yeah. Ridiculous. So, a couple more bits of news before we get into kind of our fact or fiction quarterback segment, the big meat of the show today. Antonio Brown, you saw the hit. Should be able to play on Sunday, they said. Supposedly got a concussion, according to the team.
So, but he got knocked out.
There are reports that he was faking. I know I don't want to spread a bunch of ridiculous on the show, but there were. I mean, I'm only saying it because Adam Jones came on and said he winked.
Reports.
He winked on him when he was going off the field. He winked at the guys. I mean,
to me, all that the wink is
gotcha.
I'm okay. You screwed up,
yeah.
and now you're going to lose the game.
Right. Devontae Adams, everybody's favorite Devontae Adams, avoided a major knee injury on Sunday against the Redskins. That's the report coming down as of Monday. Julian Edelman, as of Monday, has been cleared to play in the divisional round. This is obviously huge news.
Huge.
We saw what Brady could do with the receiving core he didn't have in the last two games of the year. We've also got reports that I should have said this with the Antonio Brown news. Big Ben should play. There are reports also that because of the injury, he may be limited in what he can do on the field. I think he'll be fine. He's Big Ben.
That was quite the performance. I mean, for him to go get carted off and I saw people talking about he has to have set the record this year for most times being carted off of a field.
Yeah, I don't know. You remember Paul Pierce in the NBA?
That's exactly where I was going to go, except to me.
Where did he get wheelchaired out, and then like 5 minutes later he ran back out on the field?
They carried him out, but Big Ben got legitimately smashed.
He did.
By Perfect. So, but yes, the Paul Pierce, that's one of my favorite moments.
I know.
Sports.
I'll tell you, this next piece of news is one of my favorites, sincerely. Jeremy Maclin has avoided a tear of the ACL. He was crying on the sideline. It looked bad, bad, bad. He's been through it twice before. So thank you, The
dirty cake.
It's nice.
He survives.
The dirty cake survives. High ankle sprain. Probably won't play this week, I would suspect, unless it's in a decoy capacity. But very good news for him. Adam Gase has been hired as the head coach of Miami. Let Mike's Tannehill train begin. Chugga.
I'm trying very hard to contain myself because there was also the rumors were swirling around that Joe Philbin was never a Ryan Tannehill guy.
That he wanted to draft Derek Carr.
And he wanted Derek Carr in the first round. The GM said no. And whenever things would go bad, the reports are that Philbin was quick to point the finger at Ryan Tannehill and not really offer solutions. But so, like I said, just rumors. But what I had watched from Ryan Tannehill was a player who was getting better. And this year, those numbers were okay this year. We all saw that the team was a mess. It didn't look like he had progressed in the offseason. So getting an offensive mind like Adam Gase into the fold in Miami,
Adam Gase has done it for multiple quarterbacks to this point in his career. Cutler was somebody who got back on track. There's no reason he can't get Tannehill back on track.
There's just so many the weapons there.
Yeah, and we saw Devontae Parker end of the year potential there. Hey, listen, Jonathan Stewart is expected to be back for the divisional game. Those of you playing the playoff challenge with us, there are over 3,200 people now in our group for the playoff challenge. And I am at 315. That's where I'm at.
Wow.
Have you taken a look at see where you're at?
I have not checked.
I was one of the fortunate ones to have started the Kansas City Chiefs defense.
I imagine everyone in the top half
and Jordan Reed as well, which was very helpful.
I did play Reed.
So, but I also started CJ Anderson this week. So he was a 0 play in advance of next week getting some double points. So we'll see what happens with that. So if you're playing with us, like I said, whoever wins that, we'll give them some stuff. It'll be fun. Are we ready to move on?
The last piece of news, I think, we're talking about Marvin Lewis will be back as the Bengals head coach. There was a lot of gusto in the bushes, and the spies were talking about maybe Lewis would get canned after this meltdown by the Bengals, but he will be back.
All right. And before we do go on to our Fact or Fiction with the quarterbacks, talk about the top 12 guys, I do want to take a minute and thank our sponsor, Squarespace. You've heard us talk about them before. Listen, if you know what it's like building a website, that can be a tough thing. If you don't know your way around coding, creating something that looks good and works well is time consuming. And worst of all, it can be super, super expensive. And that's why we love Squarespace. Whether it's a business site, a portfolio, a restaurant, whatever else it is, you probably need a website, and you should probably check out Squarespace because Squarespace makes it easy to build beautiful websites without breaking a sweat. It provides simple, powerful, beautiful websites that look professionally designed, regardless of your skill level. No coding is required. This is something I'm very familiar with, have had to do this with many different companies or for people, and it's so nice because you can maintain it yourself. You're not paying somebody every single month to maintain stuff for you, or what happens a lot of times, you say, hey, I need this updated on my site, and then they say, sure. And then a couple weeks goes by and maybe it gets done and then you have to pay them for that. No, you don't have to deal with that kind of thing with Squarespace. And when you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code FOOTBALLERS and you get 10% off. So it's even cheaper, very affordable. They have 24-hour online support. It's easy to make a beautiful website with Squarespace. And so we want to thank Squarespace for their support of the fantasy footballers this season. Squarespace, build it beautiful. All right, you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
I love that. We were just talking about that movie. That's a great movie. It's one of the best.
Excellent movie. Maybe the line's a little oversaturated, but
You didn't care, did you?
no, I didn't care
when you
because
made that drop.
because it got to the point that we want the truth.
Listen, we want the truth. It's not just in the film. It's not just in the stat sheet. We need more, Mike, and I think we're going to bring it today.
I feel like Encyclopedia Brown right now, getting to the bottom of things.
I think that the getting to the bottom reference is now going to permeate when we do this for all the other positions. So what we want to do is we wanted to kind of break down the guys that finished in the top 12. And I'm actually just going to read these names real quick. The top 12 quarterbacks, and what is the scoring system that you put in here?
Standard
scoring. Cam Newton, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Blake Bortles, Carson Palmer, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, Eli Manning, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Phillip Rivers. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of give you some real perspective on these guys. What was their season in reality? Because here's what happens. If we don't do this now, and if you're not listening now, you're going to miss out. When we get to draft season, fantasy draft season, you're going to say, well, who should I draft at quarterback? And then you're going to pull up the rankings, and you're going to see where guys finished last year.
You see big numbers.
You can see big numbers. And what we're going to say right now is we're going to look at the season. We're fresh off the season. Do these mean anything? Do they belong here? Should these guys be at the top of your list? Should they not? Are some of these guys there because they put up a 56-point week or they had an easy schedule and those type of things? So we've got a lot of good information to break down. You're going to love this. Let's start at the top.
With Cameron Newton.
Cam Newton, number 1. This was a guy who was drafted 84th overall in fantasy drafts last year, which equated to the 11th quarterback off the board.
That was a pretty good pick.
Yeah, we say draft the quarterback late. I'll tell you, if you drafted him late, you ended up in good shape, especially if you held on to him through a couple weeks. So what's the breakdown of Cam Newton we want to look at here? Because one of the things we took a look at that Mike broke down was how many games did these guys play against top defenses and how many did they play against bottom and how did they perform against those defenses, right?
Correct. So Cam Newton had 6 games. He got pretty lucky. And we only went to week 16. We did not break down week 17.
Good riddance, week 17.
What, like the Green Day song?
Yes, there you go.
So it ended up that he only had 6 games against top 16 passing defenses. In those games, he was putting up 26 points per game. He had 10 against the bottom half of the league, 31 points per game. So a 5-point difference.
Playing worse defenses, he was better against them.
However,
not surprising.
However, a 26 points per game on a weekly basis, even if no matter what the defense, that's pretty good knowing that you have a huge ceiling of 31 a game.
And one of the big things we wanted to look at, too, was are these guys streamers or are they plug-and-play type of options? Now, it might seem obvious, and it is kind of obvious with Cam Newton this season. He was a plug-and-play type of guy. You don't have to switch him out. You don't have to stream in his place. He hurt you 1 week, really. Well, it was a big week, right? Week 16.
It was,
but
it's only the biggest week.
Right.
No big deal.
In terms of consistency, and I'm looking at these numbers, we're looking at consistency in terms of this. Could you start the guy? And that meant they finished in the top 10 at their position. Did they give you any top performances? That would have been finishing number 1 or number 2. And did they give you any duds, any horrible weeks? And that would have been if you're outside the top 20 in your position, where basically you could have started anybody off of the waiver wire and probably ended up with a better guy than who you started here. Now, Cam Newton gave you 1 horrible week, 1 bad week, 1 where he was outside the top 20 on the whole year.
Was that a championship week?
I believe it was.
Whoops.
And then you had 5 what we would say top 2 performances. So those are like the way I like to think of those are game winning or week winning type of performances.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the quarterback, right? So he had the second to last game, week 16, he had the 142, no passing touchdowns, had a fumble. That was the really bad game. Otherwise, Cam Newton was extremely consistent. He had 9 starts, what we're calling starts here, where he basically was in the top 10, 5 huge performances, 1 dud. Doesn't really get any better.
No, the 5 week winning performances, that's why you drafted a guy like Cam Newton. That's pretty much been his MO. We'll talk further on in the offseason about quarterbacks again, but that's basically Cam Newton's MO of giving you 5 to 6 weeks of finishing in the top 3 or so, where Cam Newton has been a problem before, like last year. He gave you those weeks, but if he didn't finish as a top 2 quarterback, he rarely finished in the top 12, so he was a very inconsistent guy. But this year was a changing point, hopefully, for the complete career of Newton.
So we'll get to, and I'm going to ask you about this in a second, of kind of how you look at him fantasy-wise going into next year's draft. But one thing that's nice about Newton and what he showed us this year is that in his monster games, they weren't all dependent on having a running combination type situation. Yes, a couple of his huge games, he had 8 for 100 on the ground, okay? Or he had 9 for 57 and a touchdown on the ground. But one of his bigger games, 10 for 49 on the ground. It wasn't some overwhelming ground performance, 4 for 16 on the ground. He was doing it from the pocket with his arm, which is the kind of consistency you really need from a guy like that if you're going to depend on him.
Yeah, and a big thing for him was Ted Ginn, who had 10 touchdowns this year. And do you know how many touchdowns Ted Ginn has in his career before this year?
Oh, my goodness. Is it like 15? 10?
11.
Okay.
So
that's good.
So from 2007 to 2014, 11 touchdowns, 10 this year. And for next year, why I like Cam Newton is not just Ginn, but I think that Bunches of Funches was really starting to evolve. We'll get to watch him clearly through the playoffs. You bring back Kelvin Benjamin, hopefully healthy off of his ACL. That passing game, which
Greg Olson's there,
which we had left for dead before the year started when Benjamin went down, could be easily among the tops in the NFL again next year.
Yeah, he did a lot to just answer every critic that he could have. Because when you came into the year, you basically said, I mean, I think we said it on the show probably, he has no wide receivers.
Yeah, well, he had no wide receivers.
And I don't know if he does right now.
I think I like Funches.
And some of the guys, Philly Brown, Kotchery's certainly reliable. But when you say it, you kind of are looking for the guy that's, a weapon like Benjamin was. And he showed us that even in spite of injury, he could be a prolific quarterback.
Yeah, so I like Cam Newton a lot.
Where do you think he ends up? I mean, it's January 11th.
Right.
So put the asterisks on all comments. It's January 11th. Is he going to be the top quarterback off the board next year?
Yes.
All right.
I believe that he will be.
Now, we're going to get to the next guy. The only guy that had a higher consistency rating based on what we were talking about than Cam Newton was this next guy. And that is, maybe you've heard of him, Tom Brady.
He's okay.
Another surprise.
Oh, yes.
QB 9 off the board, 58 overall, according to the ADPs that we were looking at. In our league, neither of these guys was drafted. In our own league, neither guy was drafted. They ended up the 1-2 quarterback. This is why you can find a quarterback late.
Yeah,
because people are going to be doubted.
And part of Tom Brady's fall, if we all remember Deflategate, was it going to be suspended for 4 weeks type of thing. So that certainly affected his ADP. But people's the love for Tom Brady was substantiated this year in a big way, where the
certainly had to have been for you because you were somebody who saw a mirage in his numbers.
Yeah, well, the past 2 years, for fantasy purposes, I never doubted Tom Brady as a real life quarterback, but for fantasy purposes, the past 2 years, he'd been bad. Not just he's been okay. Aaron Rodgers had an ho-hum. He's still top 10. Brady was bad for fantasy, hurting your team, and a guy that you had to take early because his name is Tom Brady, and people love to have him on their fantasy team. So this year, with that newfound offense, the way they were using Edelman, and of course Gronkowski, and the new guy, Dion Lewis, that was kind of the X factor.
Especially the big numbers were earlier.
What really changed the offense for Brady was that his running back was Shane Vereen, except in every single snap, and they didn't have to rotate, and they're throwing a ton. That really padded Tom Brady's numbers, so he was very consistent. The number one consistency in fantasy quarterbacks. The interesting thing when you break down his numbers, Tom Brady had 9 games against the bottom half of the league in pass defenses, 26.5 points per game, versus the top half, 7 games, 27. He was even better against better defenses.
So he was better against when he faced the likes of the Jets, for example.
So you knew what you were going to get with Tom Brady, except for the playoffs.
Fantasy playoffs were very tough.
Yeah.
And that was – do you put the onus on him for that or on the fact
No,
he was just horribly
the
depleted?
team was depleted. I mean,
Yeah.
if you had Lewis, if you had Edelman in there, even Amendola, who kind of replaced Edelman, got banged up. So it was a tough sled for Brady.
Worst 2 games of the year were week 16 and 17, where he just pretty much didn't throw a lot and wasn't effective at all. Now, consistency-wise, like Mike said, he had 11 games where he was a top 10 quarterback this year. He had 3 games where he was a top 2, and he had 2 duds those last games of the year. But that made him the number 1 most consistent fantasy quarterback week to week. Another guy that you could just, if you had him, you just started him
every week. Yeah, in our league, I mean, you get to week 9 before he had sub 30 points for a quarterback, and that's elite level scoring.
Yeah. So value-wise, he's not going to be a great value next year based on these numbers.
No, he won't. But he should be. Man, he'll be very interesting for me next year to see where he registers on my heat index, because Lewis coming back off the ACL is a big question mark. Will he be ready to go at the beginning of the season? Will he be
effective, used
completely
the same
healthy? Yeah, exactly. So, which factors into Tom Brady's fantasy relevance. Like we said, look at the early games when he had Lewis being a monster. That's when Tom Brady was a monster.
All right, this next guy, I have some interesting questions for you, Mike. It's Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was the third.
Russell Wilson.
I'm sorry, I didn't say it correctly. Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was the 4th quarterback off the board, ADP-wise. He was a 34th overall pick. That's very high, right? 4th round pick?
Yeah, that's very high for a quarterback.
I guess 3rd round pick in 12-team leagues, late 3rd. So Russell Wilson had an interesting year because I believe he started, I'm gonna pull it up just so I can reference it exactly. He started the year, listen to this, with 1 touchdown for every game through week 10 except for he had a 1-2 touchdown game, okay? So basically you're saying you didn't throw for 3 touchdowns in any game up to week 10. These were weeks when they had Marshawn Lynch. These were weeks when he had Jimmy Graham. And yet, very slow start for Russell Wilson.
And he wasn't giving you rushing touchdowns either. He was giving you okay production on the ground, at least 20 yards a game. But his, if you've been with us for a while, you remember the infamous Russell Wilson sit of the week. That came off the heels of the San Francisco game where he put up 3 touchdowns.
He said no.
Yeah, I mean that's when the nuclear reactor overcharged and just plutonium exploded into the skies of fantasy points for Russell Wilson.
His season looks like it's been split in half, perfectly in half. The first half, he was a ho-hum draft disappointment. You probably dropped him, or you traded him, or you didn't start him, or you streamed against him, because why wouldn't you? The second half was monstrous. He didn't have 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 2, 3 in terms of passing touchdowns. Ends up breaking, I believe, the Seahawks record for passing touchdowns in a season, and totally, blows fantasy owners away with the second half of the year. Now, looking at the numbers a little bit deeper, he had 7 games against top scoring defenses, 25 points a game. He had 9 against bottom D, 27 a game. Fairly consistent across those lines.
That's
right?
not bad.
He ends up as the number 4 most consistent quarterback with 8 games where he's in the top 10, 2 big games. And out of all of the quarterbacks, he's the only one with 0 horrible performances. And we're qualifying that as he never finished outside the top 20 any week. That's the definition of plug and play to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he didn't win you weeks from week 1 to 10.
No, he was basically he was like Travis Kelce, where he's a guy you took in the top half of the draft. He's giving you points, but he's just not giving you any oomph. There's no juice to what's going on.
That's hard to endure for 10 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, especially the way we overreact in fantasy football, where 1 week feels like live or die. So for Russell Wilson those who stuck with him, congratulations. Or if you were one of the people who managed to, I'll trade for Wilson.
So being a late round quarterback guy, tell me this. If you put yourself in the shoes, you drafted Russell Wilson.
All right.
And you drafted him with the 34th overall pick, which already is a fantasy land for you, I know. But let's say you did that. Let's say you did that and you put him in your lineup and you never took him out. Are you, looking back on your season, do you now say, I'm glad I drafted Russell Wilson with the 34th pick in this draft?
Ooh. I don't think I would be. That's
very high.
I mean,
that's very high.
It's a very, very high pick. I mean, that's around where you're still getting elite level wide receivers, and for a guy for his first half of the season to give me production that I feel like I easily could have streamed against bad defenses and gotten that at the worst or better with a higher ceiling, it would be a disappointment for me for sure.
Okay, so that's a good question to ask. Is kind of, would you have been happy with these ADPs? Because, we already know the answer with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who's down here on our list a little bit more, who was 13th overall in all players in these drafts. But for somebody where Russell Wilson, I thought it would be interesting, 34 overall. Let's go to the fourth guy on the list.
Yeah.
Where everybody knew he'd be here because he was the 220th guy off the board. He was the QB 28, and his name is Blake Bortles.
Absolutely.
The BB himself.
We all saw it coming.
Look,
Blake Bortles
clearly has a disparity on the way he performed against top defenses and bottom defenses. Against bad Ds, from what I can tell, he's pretty much as good as it gets. Other than Cam Newton, nobody played better against bad defenses than Blake Bortles. 27.5 points a game.
Well, there's actually there is one coming up here, but that is among the top of these quarterbacks we're talking about. 27.5 points a game as compared to only 22 against upper echelon defenses. So he gave you 3 horrible performances. He did give you 2 weak winning performances and 9 starts. But 9 starts, that's not bad.
He was the number 3 on the consistency chart.
And you
don't want to know why?
Why?
Oh, the garbage man can.
Because when you're playing a bad D and beating them, you're doing good. And when you're not, they threw the ball enough to make him sufficient.
That's very valid.
His garbage time. Look, 22.5 against top defenses says he had some garbage time. He was a candidate on our show. If you didn't catch it, by the way, go back and listen to the Footies Award Show episode last week on Thursday. It's a great episode. We go through 15 categories, and you guys voted on them. And Blake Bortles was in consideration for the Garbage Man of the Year because he kind of did that every week. So Blake Bortles, obviously an undrafted guy, really. I say these numbers, these ADP, unless you're in a league where you draft 220 players, he wasn't drafted. So what is Blake Bortles next year? Where do you really?
Man.
Gus Bradley's back, and we can make all the jokes we want. I like him. Jason doesn't. Jason's not here, so it's great.
So we all like
Gus Bradley. But there's the consistency of a head coach in the system, and Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns and Julius Thomas and T.J. Yeldon, who, by the way, at the end of the year was banged up, but he was a pass-catching back. I like Blake Bortles.
Yeah, I like him.
Is there overreaction potential here?
Yes, completely. Bortles, if he starts getting drafted in, say, the 6th or the 7th round, that's not happening.
Is that you hit your panic alarm?
Yeah, I will not be taking a guy like Bortles. I like him.
He will go there.
I think he will be at least this next year. There could be some regression. So I would, if you had to do an over-under of top 4, I'm going to take the under. I don't think he will improve to get him into that to stay 4 or above. But he'll be okay, but he's going to be overdrafted.
I think worst case scenario draft position next year is he will be what the Matthew Stafford was this year, which is probably in that quarterback, 8, 9, 10, 6th, 7th, 8th round. At the latest. So,
yeah, beware.
Because you're going to look at this chart and you're going to say, and we don't really have statistical reasons to say he's going to be much worse, other than the fact that he was very good against bad defenses. Is that fair?
Yeah, yes.
So
you're projecting.
So your over under on his 4 change has more to do with other guys being better than him.
Yeah, I mean,
Or is it just
to be so reliant
track record?
It's garbage. It's relying on the garbage where we all love it, and sometimes you can see it coming, but it's not something that I want to rely on because that means he was so bad to start a game. I just for that much that stinks. That's stinky garbage. And say we're in the 10th round, I would gladly take Blake Bortles.
Yeah, very consistent. All right, Carson Palmer's a number 5. He was the number 5 quarterback this year. He had an average draft position of the 20th quarterback off the board. Great value, 145th overall, undrafted in a lot of leagues, and an absolute steal. There's not much you can say about him other than the fact, only one performance all year long that was outside the top 20.
Trying to remember when that was.
It would have been the last game.
Week 17?
I believe week 17. Yeah. That's it. So basically none because he played half the game that week, right? So extremely consistent in an offense that is best in the league. 8 start performances, 1 top performance. It doesn't really get much better than that.
Yeah, he was very consistent, and things you like to look at, which maybe we didn't mention them earlier for dome players. There's the thought process. Well, at home in a dome, in controlled environments, they're much better than on the road. He was a 1.5 difference, Carson Palmer. So between home and the road, so you knew what you were going to get on a weekly basis. And funny enough, his split between playing a top 16 or a bottom 16 defense, a half a point. He like Tom Brady, performed better on average against better pass defenses. Fantastic stuff. Fantastic year for Carson Palmer.
Yeah, you like seeing that from a quarterback, a fantasy quarterback, where it's not dependent on the perfect matchup. He can go out there and give you a big performance no matter who he plays. So Carson Palmer next year, I think if the offense doesn't change a lot, which it shouldn't, David Johnson should be in there. He's a great guy that I look to replicate his year.
Yeah, he'll be interesting to see how many people will buy into that. Will he actually go early?
Yeah, that's a good question because of the age.
Yeah, the age factor, and it's if you're looking at a guy like, let's say Bortles, he's young, he's ascending, he's getting better. Should he go or will he go earlier than Carson Palmer? I would. It's not being a homer. It's just looking at the numbers of the offenses. Carson Palmer is a much better bet to repeat next year.
I agree with you. So number 6, Drew Brees. He was the 5th quarterback off the board, 35th overall. So he was drafted right around where Russell Wilson was drafted. You brought up some really interesting numbers on Drew Brees.
Yeah.
The disparity is huge in some of these splits. So break this down for our listeners.
So Drew Brees got a very nice role
schedule-wise
by the schedule makers. His division probably had something to do with it. But versus top half pass defenses, only 5 games. 21 points a game. So, okay.
It's okay. It's fine.
So 11 games against bottom half defenses, 29 points a game.
And he had 11. That's the easiest schedule on the board.
That is good stuff.
29
from
a game
Drew Brees
against bad
taking
Ds.
care of bad defenses. And I looked up the splits because Drew Brees is notorious. He's great at home. He's terrible away. That's always the narrative with Drew Brees. Well, here's the numbers to talk about that situation. When he's on the road, Drew Brees put up 19 points a game. When he was at home, 32 points a game.
Yeah. And look, that disparity is manifested in his consistency rating of 15. Okay?
Oh, man.
That's not consistent. Only 6 games in the top 10, 2 top performances, 2 bad ones. He had the big week. Look, here's what this teaches me when you're telling me those numbers. Drew Brees will never start a game for me next year. That's what it tells me. He finished too high to not be drafted, and I would only stream him. And there are some things that happened this year with Mark Ingram's injury and the changes in the offense. Look, I love Drew Brees. I think he's a great quarterback. He's not going to be my fantasy quarterback. There's no chance of it. There's no chance I'm going to want somebody with that level of a consistency 1 year older and where he will go in the draft. I think Drew Brees is, like, of all these guys we mentioned, the least likely to be my quarterback.
Let me play out a scenario for you.
You got it.
It is round 7.
Yep.
Drew Brees is on the board. You can take him. You can play him for all of his home games as well, and then you can take a QB2 in the 12th or whatever, the 13th round, and just play that situation because a lot of people do draft 2 quarterbacks. I don't know where Brees will go in the draft. He did finish at number 6, so I can't imagine it'll drop too much.
So in a hypothetical world,
but if
he's that far down the list,
say round 7. Round 7, would you draft 2 quarterbacks?
I don't think so at round 7.
Okay.
I think
8?
you tempt me with like 8 or 9. Yeah, I think I would because Brees does give you at home
domination,
week winning type of performances, and those we saw this year. I just wouldn't want to roll him out there every week because we see how bad it can get, and we can see how dependent that team can be on the run. Obviously, the C.J. Spiller experiment didn't help Brees this year because we expected him to be able to pass the ball to Spiller, but he threw the ball to the running back enough.
They have Cadet now. They got him back. He's back.
Yeah, we'll see if that ends up being the case. So
it's the quick aside of the New Orleans running back situation. Very interesting to monitor this. Mark Ingram will clearly still be the guy. Kyrie Robinson is a free agent.
Yep.
I assumed that Hightower is a free agent.
Hightower is a free agent as well.
And I don't know Cadets, but I assume he's a free agent as well. So you got 3 guys, and they're only going to keep 2 of those.
I project Hightower to be back, everyone else to be gone.
Really?
Yeah. Ingram will start, Hightower back. I bet the other 2 guys are gone.
I would go Hightower's back and Cadet will be back.
That's very possible. There's no way Robinson
and
it
could be Kyrie.
There's no way Robinson's going to demand more money than Hightower. That's the situation I see.
That's fair.
So I think they could just get the production from Hightower. And Hightower was great.
He was pretty good.
After not playing since 2011, I think he might sign a smaller pay sheet. I don't know. All right, number 7. The
second quarterback drafted.
The number 13 overall. The number 1 quarterback draft is not even on the list because he
had a lacerated kidney.
Yeah,
so I'll give
all
him.
Lacerated kidney quarterbacks are not on the list. Aaron Rodgers.
Oof.
Look,
that's not what you were hoping for.
He didn't miss games, and yet he ended up number 7.
Well, did he miss them?
I don't know. Did he?
No, mentally.
He missed his receivers.
Yeah, he
you want to talk about it. You want to give me over under on Aaron Rodgers finishing 7 or above next year? You can give me the.
I would take the over.
Wait, he'll finish behind?
No, I'm saying
sorry. Yeah,
he'll be higher than 7.
Definitely. I think Aaron Rodgers is the assured reason why Blake Bortles drops down the list. Aaron Rodgers needs weapons. Aaron Rodgers could not find his. Cobb didn't step up to be a number 1. Jordy was out. Devontae Adams.
Yeah, he stinks.
He stinks.
No, I don't want to kick him when he's down. The man's hurt.
Rodgers, it wasn't a matter of good, bad defenses. He was almost exactly the same against top and bottom defenses, had an even schedule, 23 points a game against both. It wasn't a matter of anything else. It was just a bad year for Aaron Rodgers. And he'll bounce back because he's a superstar. He's the best player in the field almost every game he's out there. Number 6 in consistency ratings despite the bad year. 8 top 10 performances. 4 terrible performances. 4 games outside the top 20, which killed owners because owners were committed to him.
That is where the numbers get really crazy for Rodgers is the 4 horrible starts and only 2 top performances. Normally with Rodgers, you know that you're good for 3 to 4. There should be at least 3 to 4 times a year where he just catches fire and he throws 4 touchdowns. That just wasn't happening this year. I have to imagine that Green Bay will address the wide receiver position during the offseason. We know Jordy should be back, but he's a little bit older, coming off an ACL. I think he can bounce back, but there'll be some concern there with Jordy Nelson. They have to get somebody else. They have to get somebody who can stretch the field that isn't Jordy.
Well, and they should have why is his name escaping me?
Montgomery?
Yeah, Montgomery will be back next year too. Look,
he could evolve.
When Rodgers played Denver, he scored 6 points. When Brady played Denver, he scored 34 points. There was a 6-point game will destroy you from a quarterback position.
That'll lose you a week.
Especially because you were committed. You're pot committed. If you drafted Rodgers anywhere remotely close to his ADP, you were committed. And that's the problem right? Because a guy can have a bad year. Brady's done it in the past. When he was drafted high, you're just kind of, oh, this will be the game. Well, we said this will be the game for Rodgers all year long, and that just didn't happen. Now, you couldn't have a more opposite ADP situation than you do between Rodgers and number 8 on our list. Kirk Cousins, Captain Kirk himself. No one's happier than Mike that Captain Kirk ends up this high because you can keep working in the Star Trek references.
I have this.
Set your phasers to surprise.
I have an emotional connection to Kirk Cousins because I liked him.
You like that? Is that what you say? When it comes to Kirk Cousins,
he's
you like
got
that?
a great catchphrase. He's already good to go right there.
You saw Randall Cobb drop that on.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, Randall Cobb coming down the tunnel dropped that on the reporters.
Well, Randall Cobb should talk to his defense.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't Randall Cobb. But I liked him. I'm all confused on what I think it was last year. That was last year, right? When Cousins.
Correct.
Okay. Cousins had the couple
Thursday night meltdown.
Couple huge games, and then his confidence was depleted. I liked him then. It was scarring for not only my fantasy teams, but me as a human being to watch Kirk Cousins crumble. So for him to return to not only what would you call me, goodish quarterback
in real life?
Yeah,
I think he's a above average quarterback.
Okay, above average. So that's fine. I can go with that.
Let me put it this way: if you started a franchise with me today, I'd take him over Jay Cutler. That's where he's at.
Ooh, you know how I like Jay Cutler.
So let's drop the numbers on you real quick. He was better against bad defenses, 24 a game versus 21 against top defenses. Didn't really have an easier or hard schedule. Plug and play wise, no, please don't. He was the perfect example of a top 10 streamer. 8 top 10 performances, 6 trash performances, but 4 top 2 performances. So you didn't know. You didn't know if it was going to be Captain Kirk or Captain Bench.
Right.
I mean, he was all over the map. You had to play the matchups with him.
And he was a more than 7 points difference at home. So he was perfect example of a guy when he's at home in a good
7-point difference
at home in a good matchup. That's how you knew you could play Kirk Cousins.
There you go. And he won people leagues. I mean, we talked to somebody today that said, "Hey, I got to my title game. Then I faced Kirk Cousins and Jordan Reed together." And you just throw your hands up and walk out.
Now, Kirk Cousins, like I said, it's hard for me to be completely rational about him. But with Kirk Cousins, with the emergence of Jordan Reed, if Deshaun Jackson can be healthy for an entire year, if you remember, D-Jax was gone for a good portion of this year, and Deshaun Jackson really changes that offense. So you have all these factors in place. Who knows? I don't know what they'll do with the running back situation. It's gonna be it'll be Matt Jones and probably still Thompson.
You'll have Jamison Crowder in his second year. You'll have Niles Paul back and healthy as a compliment to Jordan Reed. And Garcon will be a year older. I'm not, he's more of a bold in possession guy right now. A lot of reasons to like Cousins. I feel like Cousins might have the kind of buzz that Eli was getting before the season, where people started to buy into the Eli Manning story and narrative. So he can disappoint you. Yeah,
but which we're going to talk about Eli, because Eli was the 12th quarterback drafted. If I can take Cousins as the 12th quarterback,
you would do it?
I would probably do it.
So you'd take him in the 9th round?
9th might be early. It's just that depends on how your draft is going.
Okay.
But 10th round, a good comparison here. I'm sitting in the 10th round. Basically, everybody has a quarterback, and I'm looking at Cousins or Blake Bortles. That would be a tough decision for me for later round guys.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's tighter than people would think. I think you're right about that. And that, second half of the year, Cousins was great. He led the league in a lot of statistical categories in terms of, accuracy.
Yeah, completion percentage.
Touchdown to interception ratio, I think was very good.
He threw a touchdown every single game.
Yeah.
Which that's as funny as that sounds. You're like, of course, everyone, no. People go games without touchdowns.
All right, we'll have to get through these guys here. Number 9, Matthew Stafford, a tale of two seasons for Matt Stafford. Now, look, you broke it down. 9 games against top defenses, only 19.5 points a game. 7 against bad ones, almost 28 a game. he was somebody who preyed upon a weak defense, did he not?
Absolutely. And he's a little bit more difficult because it was once the offensive change happened at the coach, they fired Lombardi. They brought in JBC, a favorite of the show here because he turned things around for Stafford.
Mr. Bob Cooter?
Yeah, the Mr. JBC, which is funny because that's what we used to call junior bacon cheeseburgers from Wendy's.
Sure.
Say,
So
I'm going to go get a JBC. So now we got JBCs for my appetites and for my fantasy appetites.
Perfect.
Which I love
Right,
very
right.
much. So for Stafford, his numbers, this is just a snapshot of the season. I haven't broke down his once the coaching change happened. I do know that the Lions improved tremendously as soon as the offensive coaching change happened. We're not really sure what's going on with their coach.
Not sure what's going on with Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, Calvin may retire, but Jim Caldwell may or may not be retained as head coach. So there could be a lot of moving pieces up in Detroit. So it's if let's say everything stays the same, so because that's an easier thing for us to project upon. I can like Stafford moving forward. He's shown me enough over the last couple of years to say that he's improving for a consistency. He's not just a guy that you need him to go out there and throw the ball 600 times over the course of a year to be good.
Building blocks for you. Your team next year, it's going to be Stafford,
No.
Devontae Freeman, Jeremy Maclin.
I'm not paying
Joy
that.
Cabell. Okay.
I'm not giving the first-round pick for Freeman. It's not happening.
I know. All right, so number 10, Eli Manning, the number 10 quarterback this year. He was drafted as the 12th quarterback, so kind of finished right around where he was drafted. 83rd overall pick. If this is where he was available next year, would you draft Eli Manning?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So he obviously he was about the same against good and bad teams. His consistency was okay. He had 8 games in the top 10. He had 5 really bad games, which is a little high. You don't want to see that, but he had 3 games inside the top 2. Eli Manning and his fantasy relevance is directly tied in to Odell Beckham Jr.
100%.
And it's, I don't know why we shouldn't frown upon it because there are a lot of players like that. We might have seen that with Aaron Rodgers. You see it with Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson in years past, and you see it with Brady and Edelman maybe, and Edelman-Gronk combination.
No,
So
absolutely.
it's almost like the players they throw to, the receivers, impact their stats. This is breaking news on the
This
show.
is earth-shattering stuff.
Earth-shattering. I see a connection between Eli and Odell Beckham Jr. They're both good when they play together. So basically, Eli Manning, you take him in the 9th round, 8th round.
Eighth, ninth might be too early. It for sure is too early. If I'm looking at like a Cousins or Bortles, I can get in the double digits. That's going to be too early for me.
Now, question marks for him abound as well. Head coach being number 1, right? We hope they maintain the system, the offensive system, because we feel like that's conducive to his fantasy numbers and to Odell Beckham Jr.'s production. But they're going to have to figure out their running game, which they kind of did at the end of the year. They're going to need to figure out their head coach and what carries out of that. But I like Eli Manning. He's one of those guys that, like Phillip Rivers to me, is just a good quarterback that generally puts up good numbers. He's a great streaming option if people undervalue him.
Yeah.
He'll probably be one of my favorite guys next year, so we'll see. Anything you want to add about Eli?
No, I think that about covers him.
All right, number 11 was Ryan Fitzpatrick. We've got 2 more guys. Ryan Fitzpatrick was drafted not at all. He was the 30. He was the lowest average draft position of everybody on this list. Different reasons for that, right? One being Geno Smith.
Yeah, we weren't sure who was going to start for the Jets.
Some drafts happened before that situation.
Until Geno Smith got punched in the face.
Yeah. Well, it was a good thing for the Jets. Fitzpatrick was 270th overall off the board. He was a guy who gave you 0 top 2 performances all year. So he never had that prolific, incredible game to win you a week. But I think he won a lot of people weeks with his high-end performances towards the end of the year. He only had 3 duds on the season, despite only 6 top 10 performances. But he really carried teams towards the end of the year. And I really, how do you get better than Decker and Brandon Marshall?
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I don't see a possible way that he's going to be a sexy guy to draft next year. You give me Brandon Marshall, you give me Eric Decker. Who's the kid they drafted? He broke his ribs. His name is escaping me right now.
Yeah, from Ohio State. I know who you're talking about.
Smith?
Yep, Devin Smith. Yep.
So you give him another year to learn some more, to be a situational deep threat. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy that I would love to take in the 13th, 14th round.
And I'm with you. I don't think he's drafted. I think his draft position is certainly going to be higher than what it is here, but which is, the dead last quarterback of starters. But essentially, I'm with you. I think Fitzpatrick they're a team that I love because they have the size and multiple options to throw around the goal line a lot, which is awesome for a quarter. I mean, you hate getting down there with Teddy Bridgewater because the ball is going to go to Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
So Fitzpatrick, you're right about that. He was better against worse defenses, and he had a big slate of bad defenses. He had 10 games against bottom 16 pass Ds. So you're going to need to look at the schedule a little bit. That will determine the streaming ability of Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yep, and the last guy finishing out the top 12, Phillip Rivers. He was the 14th quarterback taken, 95th overall. He was one of the guys that he's essentially left for dead. He's not even drafted as a quarterback one. He had a split schedule, 8-8 against top and bottom defenses, 5 points better against teams in the bottom half of pass defenses. He was 10th in consistency, gave you 5 bad starts. That's where he killed you. But for Phillip Rivers, things changed drastically when Keenan Allen went out with I think
There's that correlation again.
when their good receivers are gone, they're not as good. Yeah. So when Keenan Allen went out, let me make sure I'm looking at this correctly. 8 points, an 8-point drop for Phillip Rivers per game when Keenan Allen was out for the year. So that's a big difference, and that's something that is not going to show up in the end of season rankings when you're looking. Oh, who finished in the top 12? Rivers. Oh, well, that's not bad. So there is a great potential for his draft stock to take a hit when I think he will be perfectly fine. Keenan Allen looked dominant when he was in the game. He looked great, more like his rookie year. There was the stories of himself saying that the second year in the league, he wasn't as focused, he wasn't as prepared. He recommitted himself to playing football, and it showed. So there was a massive difference when Keenan Allen was in. He recommitted himself to football in his third year, and where we saw there was a big sophomore letdown for him. I expect Keenan Allen to be back, and to be back with a vengeance. If they're in San Diego, if they're in L.A., I don't think it matters. I think Phillip Rivers will be underdrafted this next year.
Yeah, I agree with you. The wheels fell off for that team. They obviously had a very bad season.
Talk about offensive line injuries. I mean, he could not get protection at all. And we know if Phillip Rivers has time to throw the ball. And
did you mention Ken Wisenhunt too?
No,
he could be back there. So that could change things. Rivers is a guy that, kind of like Eli Manning, I think fantasy owners have a bit of an eye roll to them where they just rather have the Bortles. But there's no guarantee. I mean, Rivers could outperform Bortles next year.
Oh, absolutely.
But who would you rather have? The sexy youngster or the eye roll old man who,
Yeah, old busted.
Yeah, but he's a competitor. That team is likely to be in L.A. There's a lot of variables there. So, all right, that is it for today.
Hooray, we made it.
We made it through. So hopefully you could handle the truth about those guys. And you got a little January 11th perspective on the quarterback position, because that's what we're all about, dropping that perspective on you. Thank you very much for listening today. We will be back on Thursday. I'm not sure what we're doing exactly. Probably another position.
Probably getting to the truth.
We'll mix it up a little bit too.
And I put a report in. I put Jason on a task.
Oh, yeah?
He's
not here.
Because he's getting to the bottom of something.
Uh-oh.
He's getting to the bottom of a churro.
At Disneyland?
Yeah, Disneyland.
I have no doubt.
So I want some reports in on that churro.
So the first thing he did is he said he's going to, New Year's resolution, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to play basketball every day. And he went to Disneyland to eat churros.
Yeah.
That's the kind of commitment he has. All right, see you guys.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.